Okay. I'm getting this up the same day it aired, all right? So I'm trying to get back on track here. Beyond the Gates, episode 89. Folks, we are getting closer and closer to episode 100. Okay, what is today? The 14th. So, okay. 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. So I believe July 29th should be episode 100. Okay. So basically 2 weeks from tomorrow will be the 100th episode, assuming there's no other random hiatus or break that takes place. So, this episode was wild. Truth be told, we had some interesting scenes of characters confronting characters we've been wanting to see get a bit of comeuppance, from Martin decking Kenneth in the face to Ashley telling Haley a bit about herself. But to me, the highlight of the episode, I don't know how many people will agree with this sentiment, but I think the build-up made it so it was a long time coming. But Bill going in on Vernon, that was my scene. That was my highlight of the episode. So with that being said, I'm giving this one a solid 9 out of 10 for Beyond the Gates episode 89 here. So let's kind of pick up where we left off. Oh yeah, please like and subscribe and all that good stuff. So Martin approaches Samantha and Kenneth at the park, and he's claiming that, oh, hey, nothing going on here. I just asked for help with my phone. Martin can't believe that it's deja vu all over again with Kenneth, approaching one of his children under the guise of, hey, I come in peace, just to get at their father. So he basically pulls a Craig and knocks him upside the face, just decks him in the face. You got knocked the F out. So Kenneth goes down and says, what? I didn't do anything wrong. And I didn't mean any harm, Your Highness. And then he bows down and, he gets himself a bloody lip and everything. And it's crazy because he even takes a jab at Samantha saying, I guess you really don't know your father as well as you think you do. So he just leaves. And Martin is just pissed off and just tells his daughter to get in the car. Now, from there, we go over to Bill and Haley's place, and Haley sounds like, just Bill. Just to kind of update him on the fact that the doctor says everything is fine with the baby. The cramping was just due to stress, nothing to worry about. And then that's when Vernon pops up asking, like, who are you to summon me? So due to that, Bill's like, yeah, can you go upstairs? Because Vernon's like, yeah, we need privacy. So she gets out of there. Now, that's when Bill tells Vernon about the fact that Kenneth made contact with his grandson. It's like, wait, Terrell? Yeah, it's like messing around with grandkids. And from there, Vernon says that we need someone else to take care of this problem. Now, that's when Bill's like, look, we need to deal with this thing permanently. We need to nip it in the bud. This whole payoff thing ain't working. And that's when we get kind of the breakdown. And in this moment, I didn't see Bill Hamilton as the fixer, as the powerful lawyer who, bows down to no one, that kind of thing. I didn't see a grown-ass man. I saw a wounded boy. Now, here's what I mean by this. Because Vernon is like just taken aback by murder. And then, look, after everything I've told you to do over the years, I've never, said murder. I draw the line at that. But Bill's like, what other option do we have? And then Vernon's like, well, look, you could have called me to tell me. He's like, look, here's the thing, though. I see Joey's logic, and at this point, I see no other option. And Vernon's like, well, find out how much this scumbag wants while I call my accountant. Now, the reason I want to highlight this scene is because Bill, we got to remember, Danny was 19 and dominated the modeling fashion world for like 2 years. So she was 21 when she met Bill. Bill, I don't believe it's ever been discussed exactly how much older he is than Danny, but let's just assume 2-3 years tops. I don't know. So let's say Danny was 21. Bill could have been anywhere from 21, 25, give or take. Now, this means when they met and then, eventually got married, and remember, Danny gave up her career for Bill. you could say that Vernon took him under his wing from his early mid-20s, give or take. And that's a very impressionable age. Yeah, he's a grown-ass adult, but at the same time, he's just going into the world. And Vernon opted to, I think it was due to Danny's encouragement to her dad, to help Bill start his practice and whatnot. And of course, we know that's Vernon sending high-profile clients for Bill to deal with. But it came at a cost where, hey, I'm going to set you up, Bill, in the legal world, but you're going to have to do a lot of things in terms of repaying your debt to me via handling business. And that's been a running theme of the show, where Bill dropped hints to the fact that he was always the Dupree's cleanup crew, if you will, where basically I'm the janitor, and in order for you to prevent your hands from getting dirty and remaining squeaky clean, you get someone else to do your dirty work. And the reason I say that Bill is a hurt boy is the fact that, can you imagine like Bill going from having not much of anything but confidence and swagger enough to, sweep Danny off her feet when they first met, to being let's be real here. One could argue the dynamic between Vernon and Bill back in the day was similar to the dynamic that we're seeing now of Ted and Eva in the present, where Eva is skilled, but she's given the keys to a car she has no idea how to operate, aka Kat's old job working in Ted's practice. And I feel like the same rules kind of apply here, where Bill might have been overwhelmed, but he was able to succeed. Vernon, seeing the potential of utilizing Bill as an asset of the family, is like, okay, I'll set him up career-wise, and that would help take care of problems that my family deals with in the future to, keep up our reputation. So Bill's morality was damaged by Vernon. And that's the crazy part. How many times has Danny said, oh, Bill, you go on and on about doing this and that for the family, but you've done nothing before anyone but yourself. You're self-serving. And that just goes to show that Danny doesn't know her husband as well as ex-husband as she thought she did, because her dad, kept it under wraps about what was done. And to be quite, quite honest, we don't know the full story yet, but it might boil down to this. Vernon could have been a key reason why Danny and Bill's marriage fell apart. Because Bill mentioned how their marriage had been dead for years now, and one has to wonder, how many times did Vernon come to Bill with different favors and whatnot? Because let's be real, based on dialogue from the first, well, look, it's episode 89. For a good chunk of the series, it was kind of built up like this Martin thing was one of, if not like the biggest things that Bill had to cover up for the Dupree family. But the thing is, even though the Martin thing was probably the biggest, there were a number of other things that took place beforehand. So can you imagine how Bill, at the beginning of his career, was happy to be working with such high profile clients, and like he was climbing the corporate ladder of, legal expertise. And then out of nowhere, that's when Vernon's like, so I need you to clean up a mess for me. And like I said, I'm going to assume Bill was in his early to mid 20s at the time. And at this point, he was slowly losing morality, because what Bill said about, I have to take on your sins in order for you to sleep good at night. So from there, you could tell that this was a man for decades who had to deal with losing a little bit more of himself more and more every time Vernon came to him with an assignment. And in some ways, this could have led to Bill's tainted view of the law, because remember, Naomi said, I used to worship my dad. I wanted to be like him. But then when I found out that he used the law, he bent it to his own, selfish desires and things like that. That's when I left and decided to do my own thing. I feel the same way about what Vernon did to Bill, where Bill had this perspective of what the law was, and it was respectable. He was honorable in what he did. But then here comes Vernon reminding him of what he did to help build the practice that he has today. And as a result, you need to use your connections and your powers to clean up a mess for me. So I feel like And like I said, I don't know. Well, we don't know who Bill truly was when he first got into the legal field, but it seems that Vernon probably had a hand in tainting his morality, how Bill looks at the law and how he utilizes it. And as a result, it was like a domino effect where every time Bill felt more and more of his morality slipping away, that's when he just got more and more annoyed with the lifestyle of being part of the Dupree family, because it just came with an interest fee that he just wasn't willing to pay anymore. And that's when he opted to find love outside of his marriage. Now, like I said, we don't know the full story of what happened between him and Danny that made him start slipping away, but I would not be surprised if Vernon was low-key one of the major reasons why he opted to get out of his marriage, because it just wasn't worth it. His love for Danny couldn't compete with the disdain he had for her parents, specifically Vernon, for tainting the man that he was meant to be. Because like I said, during this entire scene, I didn't see the Bill Hamilton that we've known for the entire duration of the show. I saw a wounded child. Again, he was in early 20s when he met Vernon, but what I mean by that is he was at that young enough age where Vernon certainly could have been an impressionable father figure to him. So it just goes to show how the Duprees can be all high and mighty and sedity, yet they aren't above going to the gutter with gloves on to make sure somebody cleans up their messes. So that to me was the highlight of the episode, because it truly had me going, yo, what would Danny do if she ever finds out about how much Bill has done to maintain the Dupree family name and whatnot, and how this may or may not have had an impact on him wanting to end their marriage. And, you know, that's what started him cheating and whatnot. So, man, and what other secrets has Bill, you know, been holding on to that he cleaned up that we don't know about? I'm pretty sure we'll find out as the show continues. All right, so from there we go over to the diner, and Jacob runs into Ashley. You know, since it's been a while since the two of them have just sat and talked, because keep in mind, we usually only see Derek and Naomi chat pre-proposal, that is. But other than that, Jacob and Ashley, we never really see them one-on-one like that. But in any case, he was hoping that she and Derek would get back together, but he mentions he's shocked at the fact that Ashley talks about seeing Derek and Shanice at Uptown, and she's still in her feelings about it. And Jacob is just taken aback by this crazy scenario. And, you know, it's just diabolical. It's just diabolical, you know, that those two would be out together. And Jacob says, like, wow, you know, if anything, I thought you'd be the first to get out there and see someone else. And she admits that her and Andre were at Uptown, and Jacob's like, oh, man. So speaking of Uptown, that's when we go over to Chelsea and Allison and the interaction from Friday, where it's like, wait, are you following me? And the thing is, after Allison cut Chelsea loose, Chelsea was the one who was acting delusional about what it was she had with Allison. Oh, it was a relationship and I was in love and this and that. She rejected me. She was married. Now it's kind of like the roles are reversed, where Allison is the one pining after Chelsea, but it's just getting really awkward now, because she's talking about all the nights they spent together making love and whatnot, making it sound like it was some beautiful romance, when in fact that really wasn't the case at all. Now in Chelsea's mind it was, but obviously she's not acting like that now because she has Madison. Now Allison is just, you know, not really getting the hint, and basically she's just trying to tempt Chelsea about giving her a taste of what she's been missing. And she basically confronts her about the whole thing in regards to, you know, I'm not, you know, you're following me. No, I'm not following you. That's not it at all. And I'm just like, Allison, come on now. So from there, these two sit down, and Madison is just confused about everything going on. And Chelsea's like, look, there was nothing serious going on between me and Allison. It was fun and games. And Madison is just, you know, saying like, okay, this whole thing is twisted. So they look over at the other side of Uptown where Allison is sitting, And she's still smiling at him. And Chelsea thinks that, look, you and I are destined. And I'm just thinking, like, look, Chelsea, I get you and Madison have feelings for each other, but y'all are rushing things way too fast. So they kiss, and Allison is, looking on. That smile is wiped off her face. So I just feel like the more that she's flirting, that's leading to Allison becoming unhinged. Like, this chick goes so far as to go back to the table and gives Chelsea back her hair clip, talking about how, oh wow, you remember? I forgot. You remember that time you wore this hair clip and we rocked the house together, and I kept it as a memento. So from there, Chelsea like, okay, Madison, it's time for us to go. And Madison like, okay, something wrong with this chick. So Chelsea is just thinking, oh, it's okay, she's harmless. Oh boy, we'll just have to wait and see about that one. Now, over at Martin and Smitty's, Martin comes back with Samantha. And just basically explains to her that, look, the man that was at the park, he was using you to taunt me. That's the same guy, quote unquote, Kenny, that was playing with Terrell, playing chess with him, and he invited him to the house. This man is dangerous, and I think he's targeting the family. Now, Martin says this right as Smitty comes through the door, and he demands answers and learns, and reveals that he learned that, Martin, you hit someone. So from there, Martin yet again is being deflective, just saying, look, I can't explain everything, but I need you to keep, the kids locked away, because this is just dangerous right now. And Smitty's like, oh, you want to keep the kids on lockdown in addition to the cops who are going to be watching our house? And Martin's like, wait, what? So I'll explain all that later too. Now from there, Smitty calls all of Martin's promises empty and threatens that, if you go through that door right now, we're in the middle of discussing something important, then maybe you don't need to come back. So Martin just reassures him that, I love you, but I gotta go. So after he leaves, Smitty apologizes to Samantha about the whole thing. And he and Martin both vowed to keep the kids safe when they came to the family. And she says something very interesting. She says, yeah, I know that the world is full of weirdos and whatnot, but, that's something that we learned before we even got adopted by you two. So that's very telling, because remember, a long time ago, she mentioned how she learned from an early age to, watch Terrell's back. So that could be very telling. Now from there, they talk about how Terrell should have known better by bringing Kenny over to the house. And he says something to the effect of, okay, yeah, he's going to be grounded from the time he graduates from college. And he talks to Samantha about, why did you even interact with that guy in the first place? Like, look, in school, there are lectures and assemblies about this kind of thing, but she didn't even think about it in the moment. And that's when Smitty is like, well, you're kind and whatnot, but you got to realize people can take advantage of that. And for all you know, that guy in the park could have grabbed you up. And she realizes how she messed up. And Smitty reassures them, like, neither I or Martin are angry with you. It's just this guy is really dangerous, and the fact that he's going after our kids is a low blow. So that's why we got to be on guard. So from there, Samantha's upset that Smitty gave Martin an ultimatum, but he gives her reassurance that, hey, no matter what, we're not going to leave each other. And from there, he calls someone to tell him to come over to the house. Now we go back over to the diner. Haley shows up, and Ashley is talking to Jacob about work stuff. So she knows somebody's lying about something, and she's like, I wonder why. And that's when they glance over at Haley. Obviously, we're talking about the ultrasound situation that Haley didn't ask for. So there could be a lie about that. And strangely enough, Haley orders enough food that would feed a small group of people. And Haley mentions how, oh, I guess this baby's just like its daddy, always clamoring for food. And then that's when Ashley's like, I find it interesting because, pregnancy cravings are usually a second trimester thing. So they have a little back and forth about it. And Haley moves over so she can sit with her. And she's happy that Ashley is being kind to her. But yet again, Ashley has to smack Haley down with the reality of, let's not forget you married my best friend's dad. And she is still using the lame excuse from like episode 2 that she gave to Nicole about how, look, I just fell for Bill. I couldn't help it and whatnot. So Ashley's like, look, before that happened, you had me, you had Naomi, you had the whole Dupree family loving and accepting you as one of their own, and then you turn around and did something like that? Like, what did you expect to happen? So you really can't expect to still have your friends after that massive betrayal. So you got to look at the fact that Haley opted to choose Bill over all of her friendships and the Dupree family. Was the trade-off worth it is really what, Haley needs to ask herself. So no matter how many times she sits here and says, I didn't plan on it. What didn't, and I've quoted this from Nicole for a long time and I'll keep doing it. I fell in love with an inconvenient man and now you have to deal with the inconvenient consequences. Do you see how that works? So from there, she goes on about saying how I miss you and I miss Naomi. And then they try to change subjects. So they talk about the Ashley and Derek breakup, and Haley gives her a pep talk involving, the fact that, hey, everybody deserves love again, and that includes you. So that's when we go to an outdoor location, and Martin calls up Detective Malone, chastising him because he thought that, he was going to put surveillance on his family, but the detective is like, well, the station is understaffed, and he's like, look, I don't care. And I need to make sure that there are people watching out for my family to prevent this creep from, doing something like this again. From there, we go over to Vernon playing on the piano and calls Anita, leaving her a voice message about how much that he misses his wife and everything, about how, it's the best thing that you're going on this reunion, recapturing the magic from back in the day. But the timing of this couldn't be worse. So can't wait for you to get home. And if things don't, turn around in a positive sense from where they left off Friday, where Anita has a falling out with the girls, she'll probably be home quicker than Vernon expects. Now, that's when Martin goes over to Bill's place to first we had Vernon come in angry, and now we got Martin. And he goes off about the fact that his kids are in danger and Bill needs to handle this situation. But, even though Bill's like, hey, don't worry about it, I'll handle it, Martin just doesn't buy it anymore because of the fact that, all these people who have been telling him, look, Martin, stay out of this. Look, Martin, we've got this. No, they don't. And that's when Bill takes a, moment to say that it's almost like self-reflection of, look, I got to admit, between my stroke and Haley's pregnancy, I haven't been at the top of my game. Like, there's been other priorities and whatnot, but it's just one of those things where Bill tries to reassure Martin that, maybe it's not the best thing to outsource with this due to the fact that we need to handle this in-house. That's when Martin goes so far as to say he'd love to see Kenneth dead. And Bill is like, and Bill is speaking like a man who has a lot on his conscience, and he doesn't want Martin to get older and have the same kind of burdens bearing him down on a moral level. And Martin says, like, look, I'm going to handle this my way. So that's when Bill's like, all right, then fine. And he mentions if he's smoking to Smitty about this, and Martin's like, no. There are things we talk about, like the weather and what's going on in the world, but I'm not going to burden the people I love with this situation. And speaking of Smitty, the person that Smitty called was Jacob. Jacob comes over. Samantha's not happy about being sent to her room. And, of course, she's going to roll her eyes because she's an annoying brat. So Smitty talks to Martin about the fact that somebody is stalking the kids, and Martin won't give him intel about it. And from there, he's afraid all these secrets are going to put the family in danger. So Jacob just urges him not to make any decisions right now when he's angry. Kind of reminds me of the Vanessa calming Nicole down about, look, I know Ted and the affair has you on edge, but don't sell the house right away. Give it about a year, and if you have the same decision, I'll help you do it. So I love how in situations where one spouse is on the verge of ending things with the other spouse, they have someone in their corner saying, don't make an emotional decision because it feels like everything in you is telling you to give up. Now, once again, we're at the diner. Martin is calling somebody to say, look, we need to meet right now, Orthy Jeans. And then that's when Bill goes over to Vernon's just to tell him about the fact that Not only did this busboy interact with your grandson, but also your granddaughter. And from there, Vernon's like, at this point, just give Kenneth as much money as he wants. And he's upset about Martin decking this dude in the face. And they talk about how they need a better plan in order to squash this once and for all. But yeah, folks, interesting way to start off the week. That's really all I have. The highlight, as I mentioned before, and the longest segment of this episode, was Bill telling Vernon about, like, you know, the monster he created. And on some level, the fact that Bill doesn't want Martin to do something he'll regret, because he knows what it's like to do a bunch of dirty work, and he'd rather continue to get his own hands dirty to maintain Martin's quotation mark purity. So with that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.